7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the City Council meeting of October 6, 2022. City Clerk, could we have a preamble, please?
This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and council members while allowing for public participation. The public may address the council using exclusively remote public comment options. The council may take action on any item listed in the agenda. Members of the public may view the City Council meeting by logging into the Zoom webinar. City Council meetings can also be viewed live and are on demand via the city's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Brisbane CA, or on Comcast Channel 27. Archive videos can be replayed on the city's website, brisbaneca.org/meetings. City Council meeting will be an exclusively virtual meeting. Agenda materials may be viewed online at brisbaneca.org at least 24 hours prior to a special meeting and at least 72 hours prior to a regular meeting. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comments in writing in advance of the meeting. Aside from commenting while in the Zoom webinar, the following email and text line will also be monitored during the meeting, and public comments received will be noted for the record during oral communications 1 and 2 or during an item. Email ipadilla@brisbaneca.org, text 628-219-2922, join the Zoom webinar with the ID 991-9362-8666 and the passcode 123456. The call-in number is 1-669-900-9128. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the city clerk at 415-508-2113. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
I'm here.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Lentz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
And Mayor Mackin.
Here. City Attorney, could we have a report out of closed session, please? City Clerk is our
City Attorney has lost his connection. He'll dial in.
okay.
Perhaps we can do that at a later time. I'll let you know when he's back in.
Okay. So let's just move on then to adoption of the agenda. Can I get a first and second to adopt the agenda as it stands, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, that was second by Cunningham. And could we have a roll call on that, please?
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Mackin.
Aye. And I see our city attorney is back. City Attorney, could we please have the report out of closed session? I think he's lost his connection again.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me now?
Yes, very good. Please go ahead.
Pending litigation matters discussed. One involves BRE Hotel. The other involves high-speed rail. We provide an update to the council, and the council gave us direction. The third matter was a claim, and the council voted to reject the claim upon the insurance company's recommendation as moving forward.
Thank you very much. Moving on to awards and presentations. Tonight we have a proclamation for the Volunteer of the Year. Whereas June Heavner has demonstrated her ongoing commitment to improving quality of life for members of our community. We wish to recognize her enduring spirit of volunteering and dedication to Brisbane. Whereas she served on the Mothers of Brisbane board for over 8 years, creating community online and in person to support Brisbane families. Whereas June volunteers her time at Brisbane schools, supporting students and teachers, coordinating school-based events, serving on BES PTO, and working to ensure that art and music remain in our schools. Whereas June stepped up to coach youth soccer for AYSO and organizes community hikes up San Bruno Mountain. Whereas she is an active member of the Friends of Brisbane Library Board, volunteering for all their events and projects. Whereas June never hesitates to step forward whenever anything is needed for the youth of Brisbane and never asks for anything in return. Whereas June embodies the spirit of this award by generously and selflessly dedicating her time, energy, and talents to serving others. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Brisbane takes great pleasure in declaring June Heavner the 2022 Brisbane Volunteer of the Year. June, are you here?
Hi. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for this extremely wonderful honor. I, of course, would not have been able to do this by myself, so I have to give my greatest thanks to my very tolerating partner, Ryan, as well as my cohorts and fellow mobsters, Michelle Woodruff and Deepika Tala. I feel also a big thank you is due to all of you at City Hall and everyone in our community for letting Brisbane be the place where I can be the change I want to see in our world. Our community is amazing, and I am deeply grateful for your recognition of my tiny part in it. So again, I thank you all for this great honor.
June, you're an inspiration. Any council members like to say a couple words to June?
I will.
Go ahead.
June, you rock. Just simply put, you rock.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Terry?
Congratulations, June. We always appreciate volunteerism, and you embody that spirit so well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thanks for everything you do, June. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for quite a few years now, and I have always felt like I don't know how you find the energy to do all of the things that you do. And one trend that I see with all of our volunteers of the year is that they give of themselves expecting nothing in return, and they're always the first one to step up to the plate and volunteer their time. And I think that you completely embody that same trait, and we're lucky to have you here in Brisbane.
Thank you so much.
I would just mention that the proclamation, we actually edited down. There's many, many more things we could say about June, and going through the list of the things that she does and has accomplished actually made me so fatigued. I cannot imagine how she does it all. But all I can say, June, is you have set the bar so high. You should be recruiting some people to help you, because it's going to be hard to find anyone to live up to these expectations again. So thank you from the bottom of our heart. We can't say enough about you, but thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right, moving on. Tonight we have a proclamation that recognizes Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. Whereas from September 15 to October 15, we celebrate the formidable contributions of more than 60 million Hispanic Americans, Latinos, Latinas, and Latinx identifying people. Whereas during this time, we recognize the positive influence of generations of Hispanic and Latinx Americans on our nation, and the rich cultural heritage they share with us from their ancestors in Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central and South America. Whereas Hispanic and Latinx Americans are today the largest minority group in the United States, and for generations have consistently made our communities strong and prosperous. Whereas we know the strength and prosperity of our city lies in our diversity. Over 800 people, or 18% of our own residents, proudly identify as Hispanic or Latinx, making them the second largest ethnic group in Brisbane. Whereas in keeping with this year's theme, Unidos, inclusivity for a stronger nation. We must pledge bold action and inclusive policies to forge enduring connections between friends and neighbors. Welcome diverse voices and expand opportunities for participation and decision-making, because that is what makes us a stronger nation and a stronger community. Now, therefore, as mayor of the city of Brisbane, I hereby declare September 15 to October 15, 2022 as Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. And I believe we have to accept the award is our very own Carla Solis, Human Resources Technician. Carla, where are you here?
Hello.
There we go. Carla, would you like to say a couple words?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Carlos Solis. I work in the Human Resources Department for the City of Brisbane. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the Honorable Mayor Mackin and to all our council members. It is truly a great to have the City of Brisbane recognize National Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month, embracing diversity in its community and within City Hall staff. As a first generation Latina, I was raised with Mexican traditions that have become practices in my daily life. The impact of our culture in this country is limitless, with its musical, political, and culinary and other historical influences. I'm very proud of the many accomplishments of other Hispanics and Latinos, and I can only hope I represent our people in the best way possible. Thank you again for the honor of accepting the proclamation this year, especially because I was able to do it alongside the individual who taught me these traditions, my mother, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Carla, so very much for accepting this proclamation. All right, we have one more proclamation.
Madam Mayor, we have the mother-daughter duo. So the mother, Elizabeth Solis, is actually also here to accept.
Oh, all right. Would the mother like to speak a couple words?
Sure. Hi. Well, thank you, Honorable Mayor Mackin and council members, for this proclamation recognizing National Hispanic and Latin Heritage Month. My name is Elizabeth Solis, and I've been proudly working for the city of Brisbane for 18 years, of which 17 I've been at the fire department within North County Fire Authority. I've also been living in this wonderful community since March of 2000, where my husband and I raised our 2 children. I like to say a little bit about myself. I came to the United States when I was 14 years old and went to live in San Francisco. It was hard at the beginning because I didn't speak any English, and I will feel intimidated when someone spoke to me and I didn't understand. I was enrolled in an all-foreign student high school in San Francisco that focused in teaching English as a second language in all their subjects. So I learned pretty quick. It was also hard to adjust living in a city with a different culture, especially coming from a very small town in Mexico. Back then, celebrating our traditions and culture was done privately with our families. But we've come a long way, and our culture has been integrated in our tradition, and our traditions celebrated widely in this country. It always makes me proud to see families of different backgrounds and races hitting a piñata at a birthday party, or when you're at Disneyland and you can buy a churro there. These little things always remind me of my heritage. I believe more and more Hispanics are getting a better education and succeeding in their careers because we have been recognized. I am very grateful to the mayor and council members and to the city of Brisbane for this recognition. And I'm honored to receive this proclamation on behalf of all Hispanics in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. We're honored to have both of the Solises here. I'm sorry, I forgot one of you. I didn't mean to do that. And I would just remind everyone, if you look back in the history of Brisbane, the Hispanic and Latinx community has been really some of the foundation of Brisbane. And the contributions are just so immense. And we are really fortunate to have this diversity. It's what has always made Brisbane a stronger place.
Wonderful place.
Yeah. Any council members who wish to add to this? Councilmember Cunningham, hand raised.
Carla, I didn't realize Elizabeth was your mom. I've known her for so many years.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, congratulations. And Carla, now I know I can tell your mom when you do something wrong.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on then to, we have a proclamation. This is for Fire Prevention Week. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, the North County Fire Authority wishes to ensure the safety and security of all Brisbane residents. Whereas statistics show that 74% of all U.S. fire deaths occur in homes. This highlights the importance of having an escape plan, especially one that meets the needs of family members with sensory or physical disabilities. Whereas escaping a home fire relies on exiting the house quickly, homeowners should regularly check doors and windows to be sure they open easily. Family members should know 2 ways to exit every room and a predetermined meeting place a safe distance from the house. Whereas simple precautionary measures can save lives, smoke alarms should be installed in every sleeping room, outside each sleeping area, and on every level of the house. Whereas the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. North County Fire Authority emphasizes the critical importance of developing a home escape plan, followed by day and night home fire drills at least twice a year. Therefore, as Mayor of the City of Brisbane, I hereby proclaim October 9 through 15 as Fire Prevention Week, urging residents to implement simple and proven preventative measures to ensure the safety of their homes and families. And tonight we have Craig Whitner, who's Assistant Fire Marshal in the Special Services Bureau, Fire Prevention Services Division. Craig, can you tell us something about how we need to be prepared? Add anything that we need to know tonight.
Good evening, Honorable Madam Mayor Mackin and Honorable Council members. The North County Fire Authority would like to thank you for recognizing Fire Prevention Week, October 9th through the 15th, 2022. This year does mark the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week. This year's theme, as you mentioned, Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape, is certainly appropriate for today's times. Our homes burn faster than ever. You may have as little as 2 minutes or even less to safely escape a home fire from the time the smoke alarm sounds. Your ability to get out of a home during a fire depends on early warning from smoke alarms and advanced planning. The North County Fire Authority urges all citizens to install and test your smoke alarms, create a home escape plan, and practice it with your family. And for additional information on Fire Prevention Week or fire safety in general, visit the National Fire Protection Association at nfpa.org, or of course, visit the North County Fire Authority web at northcountyfire.org. Thank you very much for recognizing Fire Prevention Week.
Craig, thank you, and thank you for keeping us safe and highlighting the importance of those really simple measures we need to take.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Moving on to oral communications, number 1. Tonight we have a lot on our agenda to get through. We anticipate it could be a long meeting. So I would ask, if possible, I'd appreciate if speakers would not exceed 2 minutes. Try to keep your comments short. City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak?
If you'd like to speak, would you please use the raise the hand feature to indicate that you'd like to speak at this time? We have one from Jamie Dunn.
Go ahead, Jamie. Jamie, go ahead. We can't hear you. City Clerk, do we have anyone else? We can't seem to hear Miss Dunn.
Let's see.
Nancy.
We have a raised hand from Nancy Laxamana.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Nancy Laxamana and I live on Humboldt Road. The following is my point of view and my opinion on my own and do not represent any candidate. I am a voter. I believe in encouraging people to vote and vote for who they believe represents themselves and who will be the right fit for the job. I've been very disappointed in what I call bully tactics, questionable rhetoric, and trying to convince people to only vote for 2 incumbents for the 2 open spots. I don't need to tell you that there are 3 people running, 3 people who deserve to have the same respect as would each one appreciate. Again, I'm all for campaigning and encouraging the vote, but not discouraging people to choose someone else because you all don't want to work with someone new. You have been encouraging citizens to apply for commission jobs, which you do well, but you should be equally welcoming and encouraging to those who are brave enough to run. This campaign is now perceived as 2 council members versus 1 newcomer, and only incumbents can, quote, save Brisbane. That is concerning. This will discourage residents to run. All of you were new, and the 2 incumbents were not planning commissioners prior to being on the council. The learning curve should not be a concern. Please stop the fear mongering. This is not what Brisbane is about and what you should represent. There is no hidden agenda here other than the fear of having a new person on the board. And again, as I had mentioned to Mayor Mackin in ongoing conversations, I found this very disappointing. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can we try to bring up Ms. Dunn again one more time? See if we can get the audio to work. Go ahead.
Right
Jamie.
now,
Go ahead.
Jamie?
Still think we have an audio problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't hear Miss Dunn. Let's try a raised hand from Paul Buscale.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I would concur with what Nancy Laxamata had to say. I was just one of my concerns is that, you know, one of the primary requirements to run for council is to be want to serve your community, and it doesn't have any other prerequisites to want to serve this community. And so, you know, my supporting Anthony Walker is because I think it's time that we have somebody come onto the board and the council and be part of this process. You know, it's been said at the forum for the candidates that there's work that you want to finish. Well, we've been working on this for 30 years in this community, and, you know, we're getting close, but it's, you know, it's time for others to take an opportunity and support this community. And I'll be honest with you, I was disappointed at the candidates forum because we, as the audience, were told that we couldn't support any candidate outwardly, say anything. The only thing we'd do at the end was clap. Okay, well, we clapped at the end, but the 2 incumbents were praising each other's contributions to their accomplishments and recognized each other as part of that accomplishment. And I thought that was, you know, something that the League of Women Voters asked us not to do. So correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Okay. Is James Ann Dunn back again, City Clerk?
Let me ask.
Let's try
to
one more
unmute
time.
again.
And then, Jamie, if we can't get your audio, you could certainly chime in under oral communications number 2 later on. Jamie, go ahead.
Unfortunately, Madam Mayor.
Hello?
Oh, there, perfect.
There you go. Go ahead.
So sorry, thanks. Council and city employees and city residents, fellow citizens. I'm having a concern specifically about signs that have gone up that have two council members, present council members, supporting the other two council members as a slate, so to speak. Here's my concern. This time round, two of you support two of you, and next time around, the two who just get elected support the two who didn't. So it will be a perpetual round of 4. It can go on and on. That's a concern of mine because it doesn't allow for anyone else to run successfully. So it doesn't make sense to me that two of you would need or feel that you had to support the other two that were on the council with sort of a vigor that makes it feel like there's something you have to do that nobody else can do. I'm concerned about that because every time somebody new comes on the council, they bring something. I am supporting Anthony Walker. I'm supporting him. One reason is because he talked to me. He came, had some time, spent some time talking to me. He asked me to put up a sign and I did. My concern again is I don't want to see a perpetual foursome thinking that only the 4 of you know how to make things run for Brisbane. That doesn't allow for any new thinking. Whether or not you do know something doesn't exclude the others who may know more. So I'm concerned about the golden or the yellow signs that 2 of you council members are supporting the other 2 specifically. So my question is, on the next round of elections, are the 2 that just get elected, if they do, going to support the 2 of you who are running, and vice versa, on and on and on for years to come? Because that's what it looks like to me right now.
Okay, City Clerk, do we have any other member of the public wishing to speak?
I have a raised hand from Kim Folian.
Kim, go ahead.
Hi, Madam Mayor and council members. I just wanted to, yes?
Background noise.
Yeah, hang on. Can you guys be quiet? Thanks. Sorry about that. I just want to also echo some of what Nancy and Paul and James Dunn have said as well. My husband saw something and said something regarding an election violation on a candidate's sign and was personally attacked on Facebook by a member of the Complete Streets and Safety Committee, which is, they're appointed by you, and they are in essence a representation of the city. And I just feel that crosses a line. People, we should be able as a public, be able to express, especially if we see a violation like that, we should be able to express that. And it was just disturbing to have sort of a representative of the city not take issue with the violation of the law, but with the messenger. Thank you.
City Clerk, any other members of the public wishing to speak?
I see none, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Tonight, I understand that Councilmember Davis will recuse herself from voting on consent calendar item L. And I would personally like to remove item O for discussion. So, sorry? What was that?
I was just going to make a motion.
Oh, okay. So can I get a first and second to approve consent calendar items D through K and M through N?
Aye.
And
A second. Sorry, second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
That was a first from, is that from Councilmember O'Connell?
Yes.
I did not say anything, so I'm happy to make the first, but I didn't say anything.
Okay, I thought you did. Go ahead, make the first.
I'll make a motion to approve item D through K and M through N.
Okay, and then that's a second by Davis. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz absent. Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
And Mayor Mack.
Aye. Okay, so now we go to item L, And city
Wait,
clerk?
am I getting it? Hold on, I need to get removed. I think I
Yes.
need to be a panelist or
Yes. And I need verification from the clerk. The council member Davis is removed.
Councilmember Davis has been removed from the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a first and second to approve consent calendar item L, please?
I'll make that motion.
And a second,
A point to the city attorney, because we removed it from consent, for the initial consent, do we have to have public hearing on this? Or allow public comment?
I think you should allow public comment. It's a question with the city's tradition, but I do think you should allow public comment on the item.
Right. Okay.
I'll move my approval for now.
Okay. Do we have should we get a brief staff report so the public knows what we're speaking about?
okay, first, we need a first and second to approve consent calendar item L. We have a first from Cunningham. I need a second.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I may be confused. Councilmember O'Connell, were you referring to item L or item O?
Item L.
So what I was suggesting, Madam Mayor, is to go ahead and take public comment specific to item L before you vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you meant item O. Okay. Do we have any public comments? Any members of the public wishing to speak on item L? City clerk?
Madam Mayor, I have not received any written correspondence, and I do not see a raised hand.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank
So
you.
with that, I would make a motion to approve the co-sponsorship event for the Brisbane Chamber of Commerce.
And I will second that.
All right. So we have a first and second. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis is recused, and Councilmember Lenz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell
Aye.
and Mayor Mackin.
Aye. So city clerk, could you please bring back Councilmember Davis into the meeting?
Will do. Councilmember Davis is back in the meeting.
Very good. Now we'll discuss item O. The reason I pulled this, item O is approved purchase of fire apparatus ahead of current vehicle replacement budget schedule. And I thought that this would be worthwhile to hear a little bit of a recount of details from the subcommittee that dealt with this. That's Council Members Cunningham and O'Connell. Could we start with Council Member O'Connell? Just give us an idea of the details on this.
Sure. We have two engines, and we have the primary engine and then a secondary engine that stays in reserve. Our secondary engine, and then we rotate them. So when we get a new engine, we move the primary engine to secondary. And due to scheduling difficulties, we are at least 5 years out from the date of order to getting a new fire engine. And so the price is also going up the 1st of November. And so we can get in on ordering with Daly City for engines that are going to be here in about 5 years. And in so doing so, we lock in the current price, and we have a guaranteed date so that when it when we finally get the engine, we'll be able to retire our older engine at the end of its life. The cost is pretty high. We've been saving for it, and we'll continue to do so while this engine is on order. But we do need to jump on it, because the only thing that's going to happen is the order date is going to get pushed further and further down the road because of supply and demand.
So when I read this staff report, and originally 2030 was the target date, we understand there's 5 years out, and So you might say, well, why wouldn't we wait until 2025?
We would have no guarantee that we'd be able to get the engine in the time frame we need. And also the maintenance on the older engine to keep it running is getting quite expensive and the parts are becoming unavailable. So we may end up with a secondary engine that is going to not be able to be roadworthy, so to speak.
Okay, Councilmember Cunningham, would you add anything to that?
Sure. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's reality that a lot of these parts are not available. We've got supply and demand issues all over the world, and that includes anything and everything regarding Ford motor cars and the bigger companies that make these engines. We can't just go out and shop around for another fire truck. There is nobody else that we can go to. So we're kind of in a bind relative to who we must purchase from. I don't like it. I do believe that Councilmember O'Connell also doesn't like it. But when there's no other option, here's choices we got to make. And the price increase, I believe, Terry, was 6% after November 1st. Was that correct?
I believe it was 6%.
Yeah, so a 6% price increase. 5 years before this engine is even going to be delivered. And then the whole issue relative to the spare parts that then don't become available for some of the older engines. I mean, one would think in a logical world, in an old world, that you can keep a vehicle for 20 years and you can keep buying parts. That is not the case with these fire engines. My question in our meeting was relative to, okay, you've got, a vehicle that, has certain parts wear out. What are the parts that wear out? And do we stock them? Well, yes, we do. North County Fire, well, probably all the fire departments know, on a fire engine, part number X wears out quicker than part number Y. So when they purchase these vehicles, they do buy extra pieces. They're kept in North County at the place that repairs these vehicles. And that's the best way they can do to keep the costs down. So we did go through this lengthy discussion on what happens. There was the other question of, okay, we have our primary and our secondary engine. And then once we rotate that out, what do we do with the other engine? Can we just go sell it for X amount of dollars? The answer is no, not in this country. We don't have the parts. Not a great situation in my mind, but that's the point. And quite often the tertiary and quaternary engines are gifted or sold to other countries. So it's not an ideal thing, but we did the best we could relative to saving us money and getting us in the best position forward. So our safety is not jeopardized in any way, shape, or form.
So it's safe to assume that we're not going to make money on a used fire engine trying to sell it.
No, we're not.
There's not a market.
No.
So I thank you for the explanation there. I think in Brisbane, where wildfire is always an issue, I don't have a problem with having the best equipment available before. You don't want a fire engine to break down when you've got fires.
No, we don't.
I
Safety first.
appreciate the explanation. City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wanted to weigh in on this?
If members of the public would like to make public comment, you could please use the raise hand feature. Under Mayor, I have not received any written correspondence, and I do not see any raised hands.
Okay. Then can I get a first and second to approve consent calendar item O?
So moved.
I would second.
Okay, and a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz is absent, Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Mackin.
Aye. We move on to the public hearing. Tonight, our first item is a review of the draft 2023 to 2031 housing element. This is a general plan amendment 2022-GPA-1. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Before I turn it over to staff, who's done all the heavy lifting on this quite extensive effort over the last year or so, I just want to remind the council that tonight there's no action being requested to approve the housing element. We're asking for authorization to submit it to the state, which is a requirement of housing element law. We know that the state is going to take all the time that they're allotted regulatorily to review it. And given what we've heard from other jurisdictions throughout the state, we expect extensive comments on the document. So we're really trying to get it to the state as soon as we can to start this back and forth process we're going to have to go through for a number of months in order to meet our regulatory requirement and deadline to adopt the element next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my staff, Ken Johnson and Julia Ayers, to walk you through the report tonight. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. As council is aware, we've been in the process of updating the housing element over the course of the last year, and the Planning Commission has had a number of workshops, and we've reached out to the Brisbane community in various ways for their input. The draft housing element was released for public comment on August 8th, and the Planning Commission held a public hearing on it in late August and provided their recommendation to council. And that's to approve the element for submittal to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. In this staff report, Senior Planner Ayers and I will provide first just a brief introduction, and we'll talk about the goals, policies, and programs, and how the city will meet the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. The comments received on the public review draft of the element, and then finally next steps and timing for HCD review. Very briefly, by way of introduction, the housing element is the one element of the city's general plan that must be updated every 8 years. This update is for the period of 2023 to 2031. Our element consists of 5 chapters, and there are 6 appendices that accompany those. Chapter 1 provides legislative context and outlines the public participation. On the topic of legislative context, due to the statewide housing crisis, there have been and continue to be new state regulations added each year related to encouraging development of housing and also specifically on the contents of housing elements, such as we're in right now. Although not new, key among the requirements is meeting the regional housing needs allocation, which I'll speak more to in a few minutes. Also, there's new legislation for the housing element to affirmatively further fair housing. That's interwoven throughout the element, but Appendix C goes into detail on that. Also, to help inform the city's housing plan, the element must provide an analysis of the city's demographic trends and housing needs. Also, resources to support existing and future housing, as well as constraints to housing. These are addressed in chapters 2 through 4. Chapter 5 is really the heart of the element, in that it establishes the city's housing plan for this next 8-year period. And that's through a number of goals, policies, and programs. Chapter 5 also presents quantified objectives for the number of units that the city estimates that's likely to be constructed, or those affordable units that are to be preserved, or also sites that are in need of rehabilitation. And that's given constraints in the programs provided in the element. Note that the quantified objectives for units constructed do not necessarily match the RHNA. These are simply the city's best estimate over the next 8 years. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Julia to talk a bit more about the goals, policies, and programs.
Great, thanks, Ken. So an overarching objective of the housing element update is to make the goals, policies, and programs more streamlined and straightforward, resulting in a plan that's easier to implement and better aligned with state law. The revised goals in the draft element largely capture the same general topics as the 2015 to 2022 housing element goals. The draft goals actually consolidate, in this version, the draft goals consolidate related policy topic areas and provide more direct language related to those topics. A good example of this is draft goal number 1, to affirmatively further fair housing opportunities for all persons. While the previous housing element goals and policies address this topic, the revised language speaks directly to the city's obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and ensures clarity to both the public and the state in future annual progress reports related to that specific legal requirement. Another key change throughout the draft element is incorporation of distinct and monitorable actions into the draft programs. This again will be key for the city in reporting progress in achieving our housing goals and implementing policies in future annual reports. And I'll hand it over to Ken to talk about meeting the RENA. And Ken, please let me know when you'd like me to share a slide.
Thanks, Julia. We could probably bring up the map of the city.
Okay, one moment, please.
So, brief discussion on how the city will meet its housing needs. The regional housing needs allocation is assigned to each jurisdiction statewide at the start of their housing element update cycle. It's, as I mentioned, referred to as the RENA. Brisbane's RENA for the planned period, which also is termed the 6th cycle RENA, totals 1,588 housing units. That's divided by income level, and only about half of that is market rate, while roughly half is in the lower to moderate income categories. To put this in perspective, the current size of the city is just under 2,100 housing units, and our zone capacity for new housing is currently just 426 additional units. So we need to rezone to allow significantly more housing units. This large RENA is driven by Brisbane having a regional priority development area, or PDA, that's attributed to the planned development at the Baylands, which is projected to be jobs rich and centered around the Caltrain station. To meet the 6th cycle RENA, the housing element has identified the Baylands also for 1,800 up to possibly 2,200 housing units. And that's already been planned for through Measure JJ, which passed in 2018, and then the subsequent general plan amendment in 2019. A draft specific plan was submitted to the city by BDI earlier this year and is presently under review for completeness by the city's consultant team. The housing element conservatively utilizes the lower end of the range of 1,800 units, but recognizes that the Bayland specific plan may be approved for up to that 2,200 units. Combined with the existing zoning, the total citywide zoning would then exceed the RENA by between about 600, a little over 600, and 1,000 housing units. State law requires that the sites to be rezoned to meet that shortfall will in fact be rezoned no later than January of 2026. That's within 3 years of the statutory due date of the element. Also, there are statutory requirements regarding site sizes and a minimum density to be able to claim the sites in lower income categories, and the Baylands meets those. The other significant set of sites are in the Parkside area at the southeast corner of Crocker Park. These were rezoned in our current housing element cycle to meet our shortfall with the last cycle, and they account for 246 units. And then one final note on the RENA, while the state law requires that the rezoning happen within 3 years so that development could occur within the planned period, ultimately Brisbane cannot force the developer to build within the planned period. But as indicated in the housing element, we see it as reasonable and feasible that it could be done. And Brisbane has a willing partner actively pursuing the development there. So with that, I'll turn it back to Julia.
So as Ken mentioned in the introduction, public outreach has been a key component of the housing element update. We started public engagement with participation in countywide informational housing element community meetings. We also then hosted a series of focused planning commission workshops in 2021 and 2022. In addition to these workshops, we strategically engaged the community at several project milestones. I'll highlight a couple. The arena site selection phase of the project was informed through an innovative and interactive community mapping tool called Balance Brisbane. This launched online in December of 2021 and allowed citizens to submit their own unique sites inventory proposal for the commission's consideration on how they thought the city should meet our arena. We also released a community survey in August to collect public feedback on several key draft policies and programs in the draft element. And the survey results are attached to the council's report tonight for reference. The draft element was published on August 8th of this year with a formal 30-day public comment period running through September 9th. State law, this is a relatively new requirement from state law that the city make the element available for a formal period of 30 days, and then that the city takes at least 10 days to consider any public comments received during that period and incorporate those comments into the draft element before submitting that element to HCD. During the formal 30-day comment period, we received 10 comment letters from Brisbane residents and local and regional housing policy organizations. Those comments are attached to tonight's staff report as well for reference. And the staff report details a couple edits that staff is proposing to the Chapter 5 to the housing element draft programs in consideration of some of these comments that were submitted. In terms of next steps, our recommendation again tonight is for council to authorize staff to submit the draft element to HCD for review. And as John noted, HCD has a certain amount of time, 90 days, to review that first submittal. And what we hear from other jurisdictions is they are taking all of those 90 days. Any subsequent submittals that are submitted by the city to HCD, there's a 60-day review timeframe that HCD is taking as well. So considering these kind of tight timelines and the fact the city must adopt a certified element by May 31st of next year, again, we are operating under a tight timeline that essentially starts with the requested action tonight. So our recommendation tonight would include incorporating edits, as I mentioned, to certain programs in response to public comments we received. Those are detailed in the staff report. Staff will also make minor factual additions to Chapter 1 and Appendix E of the draft element, just to reflect public outreach to date, including tonight's public hearing. Any additional text revisions that may come up in council's discussion tonight should be referenced in any motions that are made. With that, we'll conclude our staff presentation and entertain any questions from council.
Okay. I'd like to start with a question. I found one thing I just would like clarification. In the introduction about Brisbane history and setting, there's a sentence that reads, "The Northeast Ridge has been built out to its planned development permit entitlement, except that consistent with state law and city ordinance, ADUs also may be added to the existing home sites in this area." And Northeast Ridge, I didn't know if you were referencing euphemistically the last addition to build out at the Ridge, or euphemistically all of the Northeast Ridge. There are homeowners associations there, and could you clarify whether ADUs concur with homeowners association policies? Or should that statement be reworded?
Perhaps the statement could be clarified. So recent, as council is well aware, the state has recently passed a slate of modifications and changes to how cities can regulate ADUs. One of those changes was to actually eliminate the ability of HOAs to prevent ADU development in certain cases. So it is the opinion staff has received from our legal counsel that single family homes in the Northeast Ridge could potentially be open to ADU development under the streamlined ADU provisions that passed, I think, 2 years ago. So we could clarify that this would apply only to single family home development in that subdivision.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell, you want to start with any other questions?
No,
Okay.
no questions.
Councilmember Davis?
I don't have questions at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham?
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing. City Clerk, anyone wishing to speak on the housing element?
Members would like to make a public comment at this time, please use the raise your hand function. We have a hand up, and hands raised from Michelle Salmon, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and again, can we please ask for your accommodation of 2 minutes because we still have a lot to get through? Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm extremely concerned over what you just said about possibility of ADUs allowed in the Northeast Ridge on single family homes. That was a very carefully engineered and planned development in a endangered species habitat. The addition of ADUs in that area could really affect the stability of the development in terms of it is a series of cut and fill to build those houses. And changing the water flow by adding ADUs, digging up the structures and the foundations to be able to do that is a nightmare waiting to happen. It is not like building on virgin land where you're adding an ADU. And I think you need to check the CCNRs, which are part of the, were developed to, I'm sorry, this took me completely by surprise. The CCNRs were developed in conjunction with the HCP, and I really highly advise that that's one of the reasons no additions have been allowed in that area. That's one of the reasons there's certain levels of fencing, etc. ADUs should absolutely not be allowed in that development. And I don't, the state can say, sure, go right ahead. But who's going to be responsible when it slides down the hill? Because it's cut and fill. You don't want to be doing that. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this well, but it's a bad idea. It's a very bad idea. And ADUs in general, I think are kind of a problem in some ways. We've already covered so much of the land with structures and concrete, et cetera, that there's nowhere for water to soak in anymore. And it is contributing dramatically to our problems with flooding in certain areas. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak, City Clerk?
There are no other hands raised at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And can I get a first and second to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And second by Cunningham. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
Mayor Mackey?
Aye. Council discussion. I'm going to start it just by saying I read through a very large number of letters and emails we received. I would thank Brisbane residents for taking the time to enumerate both concerns, many suggestions, things to consider. I also read through the different housing advocates who wrote to us I appreciated the fact that in this document we have before us tonight, a lot of the suggestions, both from residents and housing advocates, have been incorporated. There are some that we could look into further. I'm not certain that they're necessary at this point in time, but the other, probably a comment that I have is that reading through some of the housing advocate correspondence, I don't know if they grasp that there really is an imperative in Brisbane desiring affordable housing, and that it's not a simple thing in Brisbane. We're not a large city in terms of acres or square miles. We're very small. We have an unusual terrain. We have some city properties that are very, very constricted and difficult to build on, or someone would have built on them a long time ago. So I don't know if going forward in the future, we can bring in some of these people to actually look at what Brisbane looks like, because some of the letters we received, they almost seemed like they were a bit boilerplate, where they were modified and went to many other cities. But I do applaud staff. You really considered everything that was in here. And that's what I have to say. Councilmember Cunningham, you have any comments?
Well, I tend to agree with you about inviting some of these people who are advocating things that we can't do to come here and take a tour and then reassess the comments that they're making, or maybe give us some magical answers to what they're requesting. I think we certainly can't just say, can't do that, go away. So let's invite them to come in, and maybe they've got some brilliant suggestions that we haven't thought of.
Okay. Councilmember Davis?
I actually read like you all of the letters that we received, but I also went meticulously through the survey, paying particular attention to the just additional comments that people were allowed to give. I thought it was so interesting, like people's feelings on parking, and this lots of discussion about how parking is a nightmare, don't eliminate parking requirements, but also don't have parking permits, but also don't let people have more than 2 cars. It was really interesting to just like see all these different points of view. Also on, building tons more housing versus Brisbane already feeling really packed as it is. And so I just thought it was really interesting to comb through that and see these like very opposing schools of thought, almost what appeared to be like 50% split on so many different issues. There was a letter we received regarding transit. I would love if Brisbane was a transit rich community. And I think that that's something that's often lost in translation. It's that due to our topography and also our lack of transit, we are very much a car reliant community. And there aren't, we don't supply the transit. This is a county thing where the county decides where bus routes will go and how transit services communities. This is not something that's within the council's purview. And in fact, it's something that we've had to fight just to preserve the existing, what little transit we do have. So to me, those comments were a little bit confusing, considering that we lack transit. So I think that what's proposed is very comprehensive. And I undoubtedly think that we will have to review this again. I know that likely we're going to have to make adjustments, because that always seems to be how it goes. But I think that to me, it's ready for submission.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell.
So I will say that I think the staff did a really good job of coming up with trying to find some solutions and to make this housing element be compatible with state law and still meet the needs of the community. The comments were all over the map, and I would say that you take the no growth to the high growth people, you put them together, and we've got probably just as many people in the middle as far as both of those go. And I did notice the the parking being an issue for a lot of people in the transportation. But I do think this is a good start, and that we should send it off to the state and see what they make of it. They will interpret all the data. I'm assuming that the letters and the background will all go with this document. So they will see the comments that not only our residents and our outreach produced, but what came in from the other housing people and the housing coalitions and the builders and, all those people. And I hope that they will take into account what transportation services we are lacking, and our topography and all the other things that, makes Brisbane special, and also sort of the poor stepchild. So I think the staff's done a good job on this draft, and that we'll see where it goes and what needs to be tweaked. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add just a couple more comments. I found it really interesting when we talk about a lot of imperatives coming from housing advocates, and they really will talk about 100% affordable housing, which we understand. We'd love to have some 100% affordable housing, but we also understand that there are some real problems developers cite that the financing and making something pencil out to be feasible economically for them to build. And, one of the other things that keeps occurring in housing advocacy is we don't want to displace residents. And another fact that comes through is that if we in fact say to a developer, you have to build 100% affordable housing in this building, they often can't get financing because they're applying for, I believe, are they state grants? And you cannot specify any restrictions on who can occupy those dwellings. And so I don't know how we wrestle with that. I did have a conversation once with Giselle Hale in Redwood City, and she said that Redwood City had tried to enforce more affordable housing in all the construction that they've had, and they were somewhat successful, not getting 100% affordable, but upping the percentages. And we should probably look into that, maybe talk to them and find out what they did. But if you put if you don't have a priority, a way to retain Brisbane residents, you are displacing them. They have nowhere to go but someplace else. And so it just seems it starts becoming counterproductive. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but it's kind of a catch-22. The other thing is that I really appreciate as well, staff, you really addressed things that housing advocates were pushing buttons on, and your responses were well crafted and very clear. I think another thing that resonated is that it's very easy to look at Brisbane from a Google map view and say, you can put housing here and here and here and here. And I don't think they understand the complexity of what's going on in Brisbane with high-speed rail and BDI and specific plan, and high-speed rail talking about changing the entrance to Brisbane and removing the fire station and the corporate yard. And so very hard to say that within 2-3 years, you could just, as Brisbane, build affordable housing here, 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 and here, because they don't understand there are other things going around and happening that will take time to sort out. And we can certainly try to do our best to move forward where we can. But I think this is where it might be helpful to bring in some of these advocates and give them a little briefing on what we're contending with, because they're probably not aware. And simple solutions are not there right now. So my final comment, anyone else? Nope. Okay. So can I get a first and second to direct staff? This would be to submit the housing element to the California Department of Housing and Community Development. This would be for review prior to its adoption by the council at a future public hearing.
I will make that motion.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Just one point of clarification, that would be to include the programs embedded in the staff report. Is that correct? Or a few programs included in there that just wanted to ensure that that's part of the motion.
I make that motion as stated.
Okay, so go back, roll call, please.
Second.
And second by Dave.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz is absent, Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
and Mayor Mackin.
Aye. Next item on our agenda is to consider adoption of a resolution. This is to implement the second of 4 capital facilities fees for the utility fund. Could we have staff report, please?
Sure. Mayor, council members, the city council first heard this on July 7th. At that time, we discussed the idea of implementing a capital charge as part of our 20-year plan to bring money in to pay for ongoing capital projects for the utility fund. The projects that we were looking at for this one, city council reviewed during their capital project review session. And the projects are a lift station condition assessment and hydraulic evaluation, sewer pipeline replacements. And this is a project that is done continuously because we always need sewer lines replaced. The Glen Park pump station upgrade, a SCADA system replacement, a water meter AMI, which is Advanced Metering Infrastructure System, and water pipeline replacements, which again is an ongoing process for us. On July 7th meeting, we provided you the information as to what we were anticipating charging people. And we base our charges on units of water that people use. A unit is approximately 748 gallons. We do this in a tiered system from 0 units all the way up to more than 40 units. The cost is from $10 for 0 units and $65 for more than 40 units. The goal is to be able to generate about $66,000 a year to pay off a 20-year bond. And that's why we do it that way. This, as I said, this is the second of what we anticipate to be 4 increases to do our 20-year master plan. On July 7th, you approved us to mail out a letter to everybody who uses water or everybody who owns a property in town. We mailed out those letters. They were sent out on August 5th, and that met the 45-day requirement before this public hearing. We actually had 76 days prior to the public hearing when we mailed it out. They gave people plenty of time. This time we sent out, along with the letters, paragraphs in Spanish and Chinese, which explained what was included in the letter and where they could get the entire letter in Chinese or in Spanish. As I wrote in the staff report, we received 5 contacts related to this during the 76 days. One of the letters was that how the letter was addressed to the person. That was easily resolved. The address was taken from the county assessor's parcel roll, and we explained that to the person, and she was very happy with that explanation and understood. One resident wanted more information about the project being funded. We returned that person's phone call. We talked about all the projects, especially the water meter replacement project, which he thought was a great idea by the end of the conversation. And he even said that if anybody had a concern about replacing our water meters, he would be more than happy to talk to them himself. I thanked him for that, told him he didn't need to do that. I would be more than happy to talk to everybody. We had a resident wanting to know if the projects were system-wide or focused in one area, and we explained that the projects are in fact system-wide. The water meter replacement, the SCADA system, water and sewer pipeline replacements are all system-wide. And out of all of these, our most expensive project, I think, is the water meter replacement, which will affect every water meter in town. One resident wanted to know what the impact on their bill would be. I spoke to them, explained what their particular bill was and how much the rate would change. And then we received one email with a number of questions, which I responded to in the staff report. So that's for public record if anybody wants to know. This is the second phase of the capital charge. We were going to raise approximately $350,000 a year. The cost for the customer who uses 10 units of water, which is about the average amount. And one of the concerns that people had was understanding how much water that was. So 10 units of water every 2 months is 7,480 gallons. And the increase in the bill would be $35 every 2 months or $210 a year. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to respond to them now.
Councilmember Cunningham, you want to start? You're muted. There you go.
Sorry, we're good now. Stuart, so did we, and if we did, I missed it. Did we speak to the population at large of how this would be carried out moving forward relative to what we need to replace? You know, are we starting in the high streets, how are we doing this? Was that discussed?
It was. I mean, what we did is we sent out a letter to every person who has a water service with us and every person who's on the property tax roll. What we then do is we scrub the data to make sure that we're doing as best as we can, not duplicating letters to people. Unfortunately, periodically letters do get duplicated because they may be addressed one way in our water meter system and another way on the property tax roll. So we always apologize for that. In that letter, we stated exactly, what we had said was, here's what we're doing. This is part of a 20-year plan. Here's what the cost is. We gave them a copy of the table. We gave them an explanation of all the projects.
Did you get much pushback?
As I said, I've only received 5 contacts related to this in the 76 days that it was out there.
Interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell.
Having been through this on the first round of increases, I understand it pretty well. And I was on the infrastructure subcommittee at one point when we were beginning to discuss this. I wasn't on this most recent section, but I know they're all projects that we have to get done, and under state law, the people who get the water have to pay for the services. So I don't have any specific questions, and thank you.
Okay. I would just thank you, Stuart, for your presentation. And I am on infrastructure subcommittee, so I've been involved in this and I understand some of what we're dealing with. And I would just say that we work with the consultants, and it's always tough because we're trying to be really prudent about not raising rates or fees. And this is really capital improvements, which what was sobering is if we delay this, it becomes astronomical in the future. We do not want to delay this. It's way more palatable to keep up with it. We have some parts of our infrastructure pipes that are 70, 80, even 90 years old, and they fail all the time. And your clean water to your house depends on maintenance of that system. We don't have much leash left to keep pushing it down the road. We have to deal with these things now. We do not have a choice anymore. So with that, let's open the public hearing. Do we have any members of the public that wish to ask questions or comment? City Clerk?
Madam Mayor, I have not received any written correspondence. I have a raised hand from Michelle Salmon.
Michelle, go ahead.
An increase in our water bill, sewer bill, et cetera, is going to be painful. But there is nothing except air that's more important than water, and securing our water supply and is just critical. So, Stuart, thank you for your efforts in presenting this as clearly as possible. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but swallow what we will, right along with a big, clean glass of water. So thank you.
City Clerk, anyone else?
I see no other raised hands, Madam Mayor.
Okay, can I get a first and second to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, second by O'Connell. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Mackin.
Aye. Council discussion. I would just like to point out that what we're dealing with tonight, water and sewer, this is capital improvement project. This is your infrastructure. This is what's been in Brisbane, much of it back to the 1920s and 1930s. It's old. And we've been really fortunate to go this long without replacing many things, but technology changes. Some of the items that might have been put in 20, 30, 40 years ago, they're so obsolete. They're just being kind of patched together to keep going. And it's time we have to do this. We do not have a choice anymore. So, other council discussion. Councilmember Cunningham?
No pipes, no water.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell?
No questions.
Okay. Councilmember Davis?
Painful, but we have to do it. I mean, it's just, there's no way around it.
Okay. Then I will entertain a first and second to adopt the resolution to implement the second of 4 capital facilities fees for the utility fund.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Second by O'Connell. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Mackin.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to staff reports. City manager's report on upcoming activities. Could we have your report, please?
Hey, thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item up here, I'm going to call upon our Community Development Director, John Swickey, who's going to give you a quick update on the application status from BDI on the Baylands Specific Plan.
Yes, thank you, Clay. Madam Mayor, members of the council. The latest version of the draft specific plan was submitted to the city in August of this year, so August of 2022. Staff and the consultant team have reviewed the document. We've identified a few significant deficiencies in terms of materials that need to be incorporated into the document to make it complete before it can be released for public review. So we've had some conversations with the developer about what those areas of need are in the document. They've committed to turning around the document in the next 45 to 60 days. And the goal is to be able to have a document that's available for public release for public review by the end of the calendar year. The environmental impact report, the work in the information in the current specific plan is adequate to allow certain components of the EIR preparation to have begun. So some of that work is already occurring. So we are moving diligently forward with this, and we hope to have it published for public review and available for the public by the end of the calendar year. So I'd entertain any questions you might have on that.
So if I may, John, when you say this will be available for public review soon, this has also not been shared with the council at this point. Is that correct?
Correct. Not in its draft form, because it's not a complete draft yet.
Okay, I just wanted to make the public aware of that it's not like we are sitting on this document, as a council. So
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other council questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Sean. Clay, do you have more to report?
Couple more items. Move the screen. There we go. The underwater pumpkin patch is going to take place this Saturday, October 8th at our community pool. The event is from 12 to 2 p.m. Entrance fee is $5. Pumpkins will range from $2 to $20 based on size, and there will be fun seasonal activities for children of all ages. And then finally, the donor wall has finally been completed at the Brisbane Library, thanks to the Friends of the Brisbane Library. And you can see a picture of what it looks like there, and you can visit the library and see all the inscriptions. And that is our report for this evening.
Thank you. Moving on, Mayor Council matters. We have an item tonight, the Mickelson Pool request. City Council received a request from Jane Stahl. She's the Secretary of Warm Water Wellness, Inc. In June 2021, by way of background, Sutter Health, they permanently closed the Mickelson Therapy Pool in San Mateo. The members of the group are asking the City of Brisbane pass a resolution recognizing the plight of those who are seeking relief from pain and demanding the pool's reopening. Alternatively, Sutter Health should return the amount originally donated, $7.2 million in today's money. That would be to build a new facility. I would like to know what council's pleasure is around this request, and I understand Ms. Stahl is here tonight, and perhaps we can allow her to make some comments before we discuss this. Jane?
Thank you so much. As mentioned, our group, Warm Water Wellness, was formed following Sutter's abrupt closure of the Mickelson Therapy Pool. And we are advocating for not only Mickelson Pool, but also for other warm water therapy facilities here on the peninsula. You may know, or you probably know of someone who used the pool, maybe yourself. My husband, good. My husband, Steve, used the Mickelson Therapy Pool for more than 20 years. And this was through painful arthritis to hip replacements, heart surgery, and more. He experienced substantial pain relief from the pool and increased fitness and just a better quality of life. But there were other pool users. They were pregnant women there. There were children with special needs, people recovering from surgery, stroke victims, anyone with chronic pain or an autoimmune issue. They were all able to rehabilitate in the pool. And for many, the pool was simply a lifesaver. So the pool was closed June 2021, and hundreds of people were left without a place to exercise, build strength, and heal. In closing the pool, Sutter Health has chosen to focus on costly insurance reimbursed services and ignore the real needs of our community, eliminating resources that help us all to thrive. With adults aged 55 plus estimated to increase to 25% of the population by 2030, an accessible therapy pool is an absolute necessity for wellness, quality of life, and that all-important independence. I know you care, everybody cares about seniors and the vulnerable in the community. So we are urging that the City of Brisbane approve a resolution and join Warm Water Wellness and others in calling for Sutter Health to focus on the real needs of the community, not its bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stahl. So council, we need to make a decision here. If we want to support the resolution, I would need a first and second place a resolution.
So I have a question for Ms. Stahl, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Is the pool currently closed or just closed for community access?
It's completely closed. In fact, it has been emptied.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Oh boy, I'm going to put myself right out here right now. So in 2008, my immune system crashed. Many of you know about that. I went through 8 very painful surgeries over a 4-year period. And without warm water therapy, I don't know what I would have done. That is the short version. And now you all know my medical history. So I would absolutely support anything that we can do to get places like this back up and running, because it is very inexpensive in the big picture for taking care of people who, like me and like many other people who had difficult pregnancies. The list is huge. That pool was always full, and it was always full of people getting well very quickly. So, you know where my support lies on this.
Councilmember Davis, did you have something to add?
Ms. Dahl, do you know if Sutter is already planning to do something else with that space?
They say that they have no plans.
I think that, I mean, it's my desire to pass a resolution. So I'd love to see that be added to our next agenda. I think that we should always be supporting therapies, especially those that are holistic or those that are through exercise. I think so often in our medical system, it's all about what drugs can we prescribe you, but that's really not getting at true healing and really helping people develop strength. That's just treating symptoms. And so to eliminate true therapy, I think is a really big issue.
Which, if I could just mention, Sutter Health say that they are refocusing their efforts to just concentrate on acute care. And what that means is if you have a heart attack or you have cancer, or you have something that is reimbursed by insurance, they are very happy to treat you. But rehabilitating after that, you're on your own.
Councilmember O'Connell, you.
Sorry.
I was going to say that Councilmember Davis commented that it'd need to come back to our regular council meeting. And I'm not sure that we would need to do that for something like this. Is that correct?
No, you can take this up this evening. It's properly agendized.
Okay, well, I would be in favor then of taking action now.
May I make one more comment, Madam Mayor?
Please go ahead.
I think this is possibly something we could take a little further outside of council and bring it to our supervisors and assembly as well. Thank you.
I just want that up as in full support. He wrote an article recently about it.
Oh, thank you. I was unaware.
Yeah, I do know that he's working on this too.
Okay.
So Ms. Stahl, I just wanted to ask you, when they first closed the pool, what statement did Sutter Health make in that regard? Or did they just shut it down without explanation until people prodded them for an explanation?
Well, it was closed during COVID. So it closed initially during COVID. And then they said that they could not reopen it due to COVID-related issues. We have since found out that actually it could have been kept open during COVID because therapy pools were allowed to be open by the county health board. And then they have given this reason of concentrating on acute care. So none, as we say, none of their reasons really hold water. It's a bottom line finance issue. They're saying that they did not make enough money during COVID. And so they're concentrating now on the sorts of services that will bring in money. I hope I don't come across as too negative on this, but really and truly what they've done is so wrong.
Well, I would just express my thanks for your coming tonight and
you're welcome.
Being here to answer questions on this.
You're welcome.
So at this point, council, we need a decision. We can make.
I would think that we should go ahead and give instructions for the mayor to sign a resolution in support of reopening the Mickelson pool.
Is that a motion?
I would make that a motion, yes.
So we need a second. Seconds by Davis. Could we have a roll call, please?
So just to clarify, the motion would be for the complete template to be.
I would say for the mayor to handle the resolution, and she could modify the rest of the template as she felt necessary.
If this was a formal action item, it would have to be taken up in the public session. But because it is the mayor being authorized for the sense of the council, we're fine doing it. Which is what I understood by the agenda.
And that was for my motion, is to give the mayor the authority to sign the resolution, to sign a resolution. But it would be up to her as to wording.
Okay.
Got a first from McConnell and second from Councilmember Davis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. So with the roll call, Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz is absent. Councilmember O'Connell.
Yes.
And Mayor Mackin.
Yes. Moving on to countywide assignments and subcommittee report. Who would like to begin?
I'll go first.
All right.
Councilmember Cunningham and I had several public art subcommittee meetings. We were interviewing other cities who have developed public art master plans. So we spent our first meeting crafting questions that we could ask these cities about what their experience with their consultants were, what they wish they knew before they created their public art master plan, how the plan has fared over time, just so we could learn from other cities' processes prior to us engaging in the process ourselves. That was one meeting. And then we had two subsequent meetings. One meeting, we interviewed a representative from Belmont, and the second meeting, we interviewed a representative from San Diego, and staff took notes on what we learned. And those are all my subcommittee reports.
Okay, thank you. That sounds like a really productive meeting you had. I think bringing a couple people in had to shed some light on what to do and what not to do. So I take that as a real moving forward on everything you want to make plans for.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham.
Well, I was part of those meetings, and yes, you're absolutely right. I think it was invaluable, and the representatives for Belmont and from San Diego were very gracious. And then, Terry and I had our meeting relative to our fire truck, and that was all I have to report out. And you've already heard about that earlier in the meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Connell, did you have anything we don't know about?
Yes. I attended the initial meeting with the Sierra Point Park Master Plan consultants and subcommittee group with Councilmember Lentz, staff, and members of some of our committees and commissions. It was really a get to know you kind of format, and there was really nothing concrete that was agreed upon. It was just initial breaking of the water, so to speak. I also attended the San Francisco Roundtable meeting, and some discussion was had about noise monitors and where they would be placed, and the new method for determining flight tracks so that they could correlate an actual noise event with the actual airplane to get a better reading on what the sounds were going on. And I attended an airport land use committee meeting. And as usual, we approved all the different developments that are going on in the Bay Area, or on the peninsula, I should say, that came before us. And then I also had a technical working group meeting with the airport for where we were going on GBAS, which is the guidance-based landing system that SFO is trying to initiate, and also about some other sound and noise event measuring devices. And that's it.
So if I could ask you a question, in your roundtable meeting, we went through COVID and obviously the number of flights reduced dramatically, but I seem to recall rolling back a couple years where SFO had issued kind of an update that they had plans to almost double the number of flights out of the airport over a 10-year period. Have you heard anything else?
Well, we did get an update from Mr. Saturo from the SFO, and he said that passenger last month were up to 85% of pre-pandemic levels. They normally see the passenger demand drop off after the summer holidays, and they had one of the busiest times this last Labor Day weekend. So they haven't seen a drop off yet, and they have 85% of pre-pandemic traffic back on now. They also said that they are bringing in, carriers are reinstigating some of their long haul flights to Asia and also to Australia. And we are going to be blessed with 6 takeoffs 6 a week, starting at about 11:30 at night, takeoffs of the 777s heading to Australia. And I did comment to the airport that we wanted to make sure that, to see if there was a way that they could get those scheduled planes to be taking off a little earlier so they weren't flying right over us at midnight.
And when they talk about 85% capacity that they're up to,
Passenger.
Okay.
Passenger capacity.
Okay, thank you for that. In terms of returning to pre-pandemic number of flights and hearing all the news about not being able to find enough flight crews and flight cancellations. So have they indicated where they're at? Are they back to?
They don't discuss that much of the airport flight, the airlines operations. They can't talk about that because they're the airport. And so they did say that most of the airlines were meeting the capacity by having really full flights. But that's as much as they comment on, because we're dealing with the airport, not the airlines.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that insight. So I'll do my report. On September 22nd, we had a Peninsula Clean Energy Board of Directors strategic retreat. And it was rather interesting because we circled back about programs and objectives, and the biggest organizational objective is delivering still by 2025, 100% renewable energy each and every hour of the day. And I hope in the coming months, we're going to see more coming out of Peninsula Clean Energy about identity, because it seems Peninsula Clean Energy is your energy provider for electricity in San Mateo County unless you opt out. And some people do not realize that. And because you receive a Pacific Gas and Electric bill, you may assume you're signed up with PG&E for your electricity. And so PCE just utilizes PG&E as the billing because it just expedites and makes everything simple. But Peninsula Clean Energy is nonprofit, started in 2016. It's way more than just a power company. And I hope that becomes more clear with some some really good branding and advertising to inform residents, because there's so many programs that they offer, from rebates to technical assistance. And what we learned, especially at this board retreat, are some interesting facts. I'll go over briefly. First of all, we signed a lot of different contracts in the past couple of years. I think I've mentioned this for solar, battery, and wind. And now a lot of those new providers are coming back and saying, we can't meet the target dates. We can't even get the equipment to build a facility. And on top of that, the cost of the materials has now doubled. And so we've had to renegotiate contracts. We've had to push out target dates for those facilities to become operational. But things are still moving on. Another thing that we learned is that while we're still trying to move ahead on target dates for adoption of electric vehicles, and of course, California will stop selling gasoline-powered vehicles, there's going to be, at least at this point, it's estimated there'll be a big shortage of electric vehicles, because part of it is to get people to buy used EVs, and there's just not enough of them being created right now. So as you go down the road and you're relying on used ones, they're just not there. The other difficulty is charging. There's not enough charging stations in San Mateo, and multifamily homes, they just don't exist, and they need to be in place. So I'm not saying all of this to discourage you. I'm saying it simply to advise you that they're aware of the problems and they're being worked on. And I believe there will be some solutions. So at this time also in San Mateo County, transportation and buildings are the two biggest sources of greenhouse gas. And so those are big things to tackle. Peninsula Clean Energy doesn't just provide your power. They're trying to help all of us get down the road towards climate goals by helping us understand it and find ways to implement electrification to satisfy those goals. So that's my report. We're moving on, written communications. City Clerk, did we receive any communications?
Madam Mayor, today we received written comments from United Against Hate planning meeting.
Okay, thank you. Brings up oral communications number 2. We have any member of the public wishing to speak?
Madam Mayor, I have not received any written correspondence or text messages, and I see no raised hand at this time.
All right. That brings us to adjournment. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I know this went a little bit longer. Thank you, staff, for all you did. Long reports, and that was a lot of hard work. This meeting is adjourned at 9:18 p.m. Good night.